Mike.
I'm Jason.
Welcome to Snake Envy. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Our channel is fairly new, and we look forward to being able to do some episodes that are based entirely on your questions. So we appreciate if you like, subscribe, and comment. Today, every third episode or so, we are going to focus on breeding and genetics. We've got an expert here in Jason from Envy Reptiles. He's been doing this for 26 years. So we're going to start fairly basic. I think one of the most common questions I see on social media is, what is HET? What does it stand for, and what does it mean?
Het is a short term for heterozygous, which it means an animal's carrying a particular gene. So het for one thing or multiple things. I believe you call it double het for this or that, triple het for this or that.
And what are some examples of those genetic traits, like being albino, for example?
Albino is probably the most common of all morphs. Then you get exanthics and hypos and aneries are very common. The second and third ones. White sides out there quite a bit.
Now explain real quick xanthic and hypo. Those are another two that I see a lot of questions about.
Exanthic is a lack of red pigment, and hypo is a reduced or lack of black. Hypomelanistic, hypo's short. Sorry, it's instinctual, but these short terms.
To use the abbreviations. Now, I think in order to talk about het, we've also got to talk about the difference between breeding for genetics and what usually is referred to as line breeding or selective breeding. What's the difference between the two?
Selective breeding is you take your best animals, best looking animals, typically, or you're looking for a color or less of a color. You
could be
select,
a pattern.
Yeah, a lot of it's like, some of it's lack of black or reduced black. You want a cleaner, brighter animal, and so you will selectively breed this animal to that animal, your two best, and you're going to just make better animals that way.
And that's based on their visual appearance. Now,
Visual.
how often do those visual traits pan out when you breed those animals together?
Well, and it depends a lot. Like some of them, like if you're just looking for a clean, bright animal, line breeding, selective breeding for a different look. But then there's also colors that you can line breed to make it a brighter yellow, red, orange, or black, whatever these. They're not a recessive trait. So it's a line bred trait. You have to breed the best to make better. That's selective breeding.
And
line breeding.
With genetic breeding, you're breeding for things you can't necessarily see. Sometimes a snake is het and also visual, correct?
Yes, there's indicators, markers.
Right, but genetic breeding is more about breeding for potential, for things that you can't see.
Right.
And what are the odds greater or less that the het is going to pan out versus visual? Or is it about the same?
Well, the thing with hets, it's almost breaks down into, percentages where
you can predict.
You can kind of predict. So breeding het to het, 1 out of 4 will be a visual. The other 3 will be 66% possible het for that visual. And there's no way of knowing. You're going to have to test breed to figure that out.
So you know that it's 66% possible, but you won't know for sure until you breed the offspring. Yes. Even.
And
but people buy them based on the possibility, though, right?
Yeah, it's a gamble, so usually they're less valued.
Right. Versus a proven het.
A proven het, a definite het is going to be more desirable for sure.
Now, the thing I've always wondered as a hobbyist is, if I have no intention of breeding my snakes, is there any reason for me to pay $100 more for a proven het animal if I have no intention of ever breeding it? Or to even take that a step further, would you want to sell me a proven het animal knowing I'm not going to breed it? Would you prefer that animal go to someone else? And is that partly why you price them the way you do?
That's definitely why they're priced differently, is because one is genetic for this or that. That's going to make a difference. But to someone that's just wanting to keep an animal, a pet, it's no difference. I mean, I would take the one that's you don't need. I mean, you take the cheaper one.
You take the cheaper visual one. Yeah.
Right. I had a customer that wanted an albino gopher snake, and they picked out one that was multi-head. And I said, well, I have this one that's not, it's possible head. It's $100 cheaper. And so I directed her that way.
Yeah, then that makes sense. So when you go into every breeding season, how does het factor into your plans? And how often are you trying to match het to het? How often are you only trying to match het to visual? I mean, what goes into your strategy surrounding het positive animals?
Well, like most breeders, you're going to want to breed a visuals, or I really like breeding a visual to a het. Then I get about 50% visual, 50% het, and it's great for the buyer because it might save you $100 or more getting a het versus a visual. So it's a cheap way, and I like it because you get a little variety of look. So that is one important reason for me. I will breed multi visuals to multi hets. I like doing it that way. I get a big variety of colors that way.
And do you ever breed, for example, multiple males to a single female? And what does that do to all the odds in terms of het characteristics?
I do breed males. I sometimes breed a male up to 5 females. I try to keep it
so it's the other way around. Instead of a single female being bred by multiple males, you're breeding a male to multiple females, or do you do both?
I don't switch my females with multiple males unless they're exact same genetics.
Gotcha.
Because
you want to be sure.
You want to know what your offspring are het for. If you're just throwing random males at her, who knows what's genetics are in there.
Right. I think what I was considering is maybe you got 2 males that you know are het positive, but maybe they're positive for different het traits, and then you got a female that's multi-het. What happens then? It's like a crapshoot, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't recommend
probably not worth doing.
Like, I would rather not get any eggs than not know the exact outcome of what is going to be there.
So more likely you have a single male that's breeding to multiple females.
Typically, yes.
And het factors into those plans as well.
I mean, if you have a group of the exact same thing, sure, mix it up. I do that because sometimes you get a male that's not fertile that year for whatever reason. That happens occasionally. And so you're going to up your odds if you run multiple males to the same female, as long as you're the same genetics.
As long as the genetics match up.
If that's what you're going for.
Is there anything you can think of about het that we haven't already talked about that's important for people to understand?
When you start getting multiple hets, your numbers are going to increase, like, percentage wise. So if you're breeding a double het to a het, a double het to a double het, it's going to be, there's so many scenarios, not like het versus this, but het to het, double het to double het. We talked about single het to het breeding is 1 out of 4 visuals. We talked about that, but then when you do a double het to double het, you still get 1 out of 4 this color, 1 out of 4 that color, and then 1 out of 9 is a double visual. So it's harder odds to get those multiple visuals, and it just increases when you start getting triple and quads and quin hets. It just gets crazy. Your numbers get crazy on you, and like 4 het
You may as well go to Vegas if you're talking quadruple heads. And I think the last question I would have for you about HET is, let's say a brand new project, and I've got two animals that I know are positive HET for, let's say, albino, just as an example. And I know that they're both positive for that. How many offspring do you expect to get that are visually albino? How many do you expect to get that are, let's say we have 10 eggs. How many of those are going to be visual? How many of those are going to be potentially HET? And then what happens then? Which of those possibilities do you hold back? How do you make that decision? And then what happens in the next generation or two?
So if you're doing head to head and you got 10 eggs, your odds is 2 visuals. It's like 1 out of 8. 1 out of 4 is a visual, so you got 10 eggs. So you got, you can get you can get crazy numbers, sometimes lopsided. This is not a guarantee, it's just odds. And so,
but at least 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's typically what you should get. I've had projects where I've been breeding triple heads, and it's taken me 10 years to get a triple visual. Some of these projects are long and
lengthy.
Yeah, and sometimes you get lucky.
Now you've got the 2 visuals, so are you going to hold one of those back?
I probably would keep 2 visuals.
Keep them both.
Yeah.
And then what?
Depending on the rare, like what you're dealing with.
Right,
if it's something rare
albinos,
something brand new, you might want to keep the whole thing.
Keep the whole thing.
But, I would probably keep 2 visuals, 2 POS. 66 POS heads. I did it this year just right over here with some stuff.
Excellent. So again, please like, subscribe, and comment. We're going to end the video by taking a look at a few snakes that Jason's working on here that are HET. We're going to kind of show you that 2 snakes can look very similar but have very different genetics. He's going to show us some examples of what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to show you the difference between 2 snakes that really doesn't look different at all, but the difference is genetically. So you can save a few dollars by getting an animal that looks the same versus a HET. You can save a few dollars that way. So let's look at these. These are Sonoran gopher snakes. They look very similar. One's a little bit bigger. This one here is 66 possible HET for Xanthic and albino. Both parents were multi-HET, and that's why you get the 66% chance. This is a $100 animal compared to this one, which is $250, and this one is definite HET for Rusty and Meeker. And this is more like a breeding project for a specific look. And so what Meeker is a gene that is an aberrancy. And it came out of El Paso, Texas area, was the origin of the Meeker gene. And the Rusty gene it looks very much like a male. It's kind of a mystery if it's an albino or a hypo or a T positive. They have normal eyes, but very vibrant colors. And that was found in Tucson, the original one. And so that's the difference between these 2. And the Xanthic.
Let's see the 2 side by side now. So for me as a hobbyist, if I'm coming to Jason's place to look at these 2 animals, there's a little bit of a difference. The one on the right is definitely brighter. But the thing about gopher snakes too is they're both going to change quite a bit.
These are going to be pretty.
They're both going to look great, but as you said, we're talking a $150 difference just based on genetics of the one on the right.
Correct. Yep. And so these are going to brighten up. They're going to get some yellows and peach colors in them. And so just be aware.
Thank you.
Thanks.